and welcome once again to Flash Discussions. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Dan.
And once again, we're on audio. I'm just going to stop saying that. I'm just going to assume that it's going to be audio unless we get really lucky and we get to do one video. Once again, Dan's having some issues with his internet a little bit in the dorm room he's in, so we can blame his college. And we are on audio once again today. Today, we're going to talk about the fourth episode of Arrow. Most recent episode is Going Rogue, the first appearance of Captain Cold, which is really exciting, both because we get Captain Cold in full costume, and I think he's really super cool, but, see what I did there?
Can I just clarify something before we keep going?
Yeah, but hold on. But also it's neat because it's the first time that we've had a villain that didn't seem like a completely generic two-dimensional nothing.
Yes, and I would just like to clarify. You called the show Arrow. We're talking about.
Oh, did
Flash.
I really?
Yeah.
I meant Flash. Sorry, I was looking at some notes here, and I believe it or not, in my notes I wrote Arrow. I wrote Arrow notes Going Rogue. Yeah. So okay. Thanks, Dan.
No problem.
Dan's like, no, really, let me interrupt you and stop what you're doing right now because no one's paying attention to you. They're just all laughing at you because you do so many of these discussions now, you don't even know what show you're doing.
I mean, this is the fastest of all of them, so.
Well, you know what? So far, there has been no more appropriate episode for me to accidentally call Arrow than this one. And before we talk about some questions and comments from last week, I'll go ahead now because that happened and say that one thing I thought was really funny was at the very beginning. When it does the previously on Flash thing, previously on the Flash, immediately Arrow footage.
Yes, that is true.
That was really funny. It should. I don't know how else you would have done it, but previously on the Flash and the show that this was spun off from.
That is very true.
Let's go ahead and talk about some questions and comments from last time. Things you can't outrun. I asked the question last week, are we going to manage to get a running or speed reference in every title? And no, apparently, because the fourth episode does not have that. But they all have sort of been pseudo-Flash references because the Rogues thing is a Flash reference and the rest of it is all about running.
That is true.
All right, Keith Hastings. Hey, Cap and Dan. You guys forgot to mention after Flash leaves the crook in the cop's back seat in the police station, Barry says he doesn't do this for the fame and he doesn't need a museum in his name. I geeked out at the mention of the Flash Museum. I didn't even catch it.
Yeah, that was a very astute observation. I kind of didn't notice that as I was watching it, and I watched last week's episode twice. I'm surprised I didn't catch that. Thanks for mentioning that, though. That's really cool. We've obviously been talking about the Flash Museum and the little references we've been getting to it throughout these 4 episodes here, and there's more of them in this episode too. So it's really cool that they're already seeding that kind of thing.
I gotta assume that's not just like cool little nods to a thing they'll never do, but that they're just setting it up. I mean, this show has been so cool, and Arrow too, especially now as it's embracing all the comic book stuff. That like when those sorts of things happen, I think you can kind of just expect, okay, they're letting people that know the comics already go, yep, we're doing everything, we're doing all your favorite stuff.
I hope so.
Not just referencing stuff because it's cool, yeah, Red Leader Antilles, Killer Frost is not really a Suicide Squad character. Mainly, she's a Firestorm villain most of the time. That makes a lot of sense. Given I didn't know that. That makes a lot of sense given that she and Ronnie were an item, and that we've had a lot of Firestorm stuff already.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know anything about those two characters in the comics, just because I haven't read anything featuring them besides in supporting character roles. I would be curious to know if they were husband and wife in the comics, or if they had any sort of romantic relationship.
Dan, do those sirens in the background mean that you got to quit and go fight crime?
Yes, it does. It means I have to go fight the crime of drunk people on Thursday night who need assistance.
Man, with great drunkenness comes Dan's great responsibility to help out people.
Yeah, I'm stomach pump man.
Oh, man. Well, now we know your secret identity. I don't know. That was a bit of a letdown, Dan. Nico's 52. I think the issue with the villains not being characterized that well will fade in the next few episodes. I agree. I've seen this one now. They still need to flesh out our main characters or at least show us the dynamics they have with each other, and I think they've done a good job with that in both the second and third episode. You still need someone cool for the Flash to fight. I'm going to laugh every time that word comes up today. But not someone that'll steal the focus. The next episode will feature a famous Flash villain played by a known actor, and yeah, he's absolutely right. I mean, that's precisely what's going on. I don't necessarily agree that in setting up character dynamics and personalities that you've got to do throwaway villains because you don't have enough time for real ones. It kind of makes me think that maybe you could just do some. I don't know. My first instinct is maybe you could do some stories that just don't involve supervillains.
Or you could do some stories that were similar to this one, where we get Captain Cold's introduction, and we don't really know all that much about him, other than he's kind of like a, you know, criminal that's good at what he does, and still flesh out the characters and just don't kill him at the end, and have him come back and we can flesh him out later.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, so we get this villain, and he's immediately got potential and has a lot of screen presence, I think.
Oh, I
And
agree. I loved everything about him in this episode.
and and now I will agree. I will say that he probably has a little bit more screen time than the other villains that we've had so far, but that didn't take away from or deter character progression and continuing to build people's personalities. I felt like there was just enough, just as much stuff for everybody to do, and we're learning more about characters as much as we have in any other episode. Cisco got an episode.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think we
I have a couple issues with what was done with Cisco, but we're we're not just going, okay, we're doing a villain like that's gonna matter, so we're gonna skimp off on the character stuff.
right, and I think we got to know Eddie a little bit more in his relationship with Joe in this episode too. And once again, there's things that I don't necessarily love about what was done when they went there, but at least they're attempting, and we're learning a little bit more about their personalities, right?
Yeah, exactly. Uh, 1 second.
Sure.
LaserDude99, maybe Wells knew his plan to take out the Mist would work because he faced him in the future. That's possible.
That is possible. I kind of hope that everything isn't solved by Wells knew this from the future, though. That's kind of a Deus Ex Machina kind of thing. I would kind of like it if Barry figured out some of these things on his own through his scientific intuition, because he's a smart guy too. He's capable of figuring that kind of stuff out.
Not to mention that Wells is manipulating the present, and so things are going to turn out differently than they did in his timeline in the first place. So what I'd like to see is that as time goes on, I mean, assuming that what is happening is what we think is happening, as time goes on, I'm hoping to see Wells have less and less of a certainty of what's going to happen and who characters are, because he's changed so much that there are consequences to that. It changes the direction that people go and choices they make.
Right, exactly. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to predictions, but I think there's things in this episode that didn't go according to his plan, potentially.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I thought was really cool in this one is that there's a couple of moments where he seems to say things because it's informed by what he knows about the future. And in one case, he is able to make it really obvious, or like not make it obvious at all, where he just says a thing, and I could kind of take it either way, where it's like, okay, you're saying a thing because of the future, or you're saying a thing anybody would say. And then there's another point where it seemed like he was kind of catching himself a little bit.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, I'm just loving that character every time that he's on screen, and I loved every time Captain Cold was on screen too. So I'm really hoping that those two end up being Reverse Flash, and obviously he's going to be Captain Cold. I don't think there's going to be any mystery as to like another Captain Cold or anything. But if we have those two actors playing the arch enemies of the Flash, I'm really excited.
Yeah. Hawk Flame. Okay, this is kind of annoying me. You two keep calling Danielle Panabaker's character Caitlin Frost. Her name is Caitlin Snow, though she becomes Killer Frost. Get your ridiculously on-the-nose ice theme puns right. Yeah, yeah, fair enough. I'm just gonna start calling her Caitlin Cold to completely confuse the issue.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry about that.
Caitlin and Killer are pretty close, so we probably mixed it up. I'm sorry.
It's Killer Snow.
Killer Snow, I like that. It'd be like Yellow Snow.
This is an interesting comment. Slash Handsbones 13. The Irish relationship is too meh for me to hate it.
That's an interesting perspective.
Like, why do you guys keep complaining about that relationship? You might as well just not talk about it.
I mean, I'm not concerned about like the interpersonal relationship between her and Eddie. It was more about the relationship between her and her father. But like, yeah, I'm with you. I'm not really into their romantic relationship until maybe this episode. They do some things with it that make it a little bit more fleshed out, but I still think Iris is acting a little shallow in this episode. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, I kind of had that too, and I think that, I mean, we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but I think that is like further drawn to the forefront and seems more problematic to me because Felicity's here.
Yes, and she's awesome.
And she's awesome. George Simmons, hey guys, while this might be a slight stretch, I really think that Barry's dad at least played a part in Barry's mom's death. This is partly due to the line he had in jail when talking to Joe, when he said, "What matters is that you believed him being Barry." However, it's mainly due to the fact that as it's a TV show, you wouldn't be able to show what happened between Barry's transportation and the dad's arrest, in which he could interact with a time traveler and in turn reveal their connection. What are your guys' thoughts? I would be really surprised if they went there.
I would be really surprised too. I mean, I would be really cool if they made with the idea of making John Wesley Shipp a version of Jay Garrick or something, like making him a Flash before the Flash that we're following or something somehow. I think that would be cool, just because he's played the Flash before, and in the comics, Barry wasn't the first Flash. So, like, if he had Flash powers or something, I'd be fine with that. But I would be very surprised if they make any of the Allens, like, killers from the past or the future. Like, I've heard people speculating, like, maybe Wells is Barry from the future. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't want Barry Allen to knife murder people. Like, that's just not.
Even if it is a future version of it, I mean, they could do some kind of thing. I'm sure this is not what they're doing, but they could do some sort of thing where, like in seeing the future self that he could turn into, it makes him a better person and he never goes there. But I just don't see it in this character.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, now that's not to say that now if you were to go there, it could be a thing where you're making the case that human nature allows for anyone to possibly become a monster.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's true. I don't know.
I don't see this show doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be very strange to make Barry Allen a knife murderer. I don't know.
That would almost feel like they're making this like a lighthearted family kind of show in order to subvert our expectations and make us not expect that coming, and then it just turns into a really, really dark show. Where it's like, yeah, that wasn't what you thought, and then at the same time that happens, like Arrow becomes this show.
Yeah, I was gonna say it would become a proper spin-off, quote unquote, of Arrow at that point if we're gonna try to match up tones. So I mean, I'm hoping they don't go there, just because I wouldn't mind them going to dark places in that regard, but I like that the Flash himself is lighthearted and stuff. Not that
Flash is not an inherently tragic character like Arrow is.
Right, exactly.
And I just don't see the point of doing this show if you're going to do the exact same kind of thing where like if we do more than one superhero show in this universe, and especially if we start doing other ones, like every one of them has to be the story of the hero who wasn't really a hero, or that like tried to be a hero but made everything work. I mean, there was some of that here where you have the arch nemesis that couldn't exist without the Flash, but I don't think that he's an inherently tragic character. I think that that's just simply an actions have consequences. What are you going to do kind of statement.
Right. And I'm hoping that they don't really go down that dark path unless it's warranted within what they're trying to do with the story. Like, I don't mind taking Barry to dark places, and there's kind of some darkness in this episode with what Barry has to deal with and how it relates to what Joe and him were discussing at the end of the last episode, which I liked. I like that they addressed that kind of right away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't mind taking the character to some places where he realizes, for example, that he can't save everybody and people are going to die no
Oh
matter how
yeah.
hard he tries and things like that. But I don't want to turn him himself into a pessimistic person that feels like he has to go back in time and knife murder people in order to make the world better, you know?
Yeah, no, weightiness is good. This guy realizing the reality of the situation is good.
Yes.
But I don't need him to get to like really really dark knifing people kinds of
I know we keep
places.
coming back to that, but I have to stress, like, that's just not something I want to see.
All right, let's move on. This is I got just a couple more here. Malzra
Sure.
Erwin. One thing Flash has in common with Spider-Man, or one other thing Flash has in common with Spider-Man: public displays of power that should be raising questions. I
That's
get
really
that
funny.
I get that what a lot of what Barry does is too fast to see, but he appears and disappears in public areas like open streets with super speed too often for someone not to notice at least that. It reminds me of Peter Parker damaging the goalpost in Amazing Spider-Man by throwing a football. Well, you want to know what it reminds me of now that you say that? Clark Kent in Smallville. Is in fact it happens so often I'm thinking about adding it to the list of things to count in counting Cryptofreaks. He'll be super speeding and then he'll just show up in the middle of a really populated area like he was beamed down from a starship and no one notices.
Well, I mean,
Last Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know too much about how prevalent cameras were on streets in the Midwest back when that show was being made. So maybe there's, an excuse for Smallville's case, but
No, there's not, because it's not just a matter of people not taking video and posting it places. Literally, you could be in Times Square and he shows up and no one notices.
oh, okay. I didn't know it was that heavily populated. Yeah,
No,
that's weird.
it's just he'll show up in the middle of there's one scene I'm thinking season two, the episode with the kid in the hot air balloon. He shows up in the middle of an airport, just out of nowhere. They try to shoot it in such a way where you wouldn't think about it, but when you look around and you see how many people are there, somebody would have probably been like, "Holy crap! Do you see that guy just show up out of nowhere? He just materialized." All right, last comment from last week, Daniel Dunderdale. Hey Cap, do you think it's possible that they're setting up an idea of Barry's dad thinking Flash killed his wife or him knowing who Flash is? I think that's a really good possibility. I wouldn't have thought of that,
Ooh, I
but
like that.
but if it happens, Barry has a really easy out. All he has to do is say, "No, Dad, that guy's costume was yellow, not red."
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that angle though, because it reminds me a lot of how Gwen Stacy hated Spider-Man in the comics because she thought that Spider-Man was responsible for her father's death when it was really Doctor Octopus.
Yeah,
It's kind of that thing, but with the character's own father. So I don't know. I think that would be really interesting, like to have Barry's superhero identity like reviled by his father and stuff. That would be really that's some good drama right there. If they eventually get Barry's dad out of jail, that would be a cool direction to go in.
I guess because of the Spider-Man stuff, it does seem maybe a little potentially typical, but then it's always hard to tell where to draw the line between like tropes that are just kind of inherent to telling these kinds of stories. Like this is a thing that I've been fighting myself on a little bit lately.
Yeah.
I'm watching some superhero shows and going, "Why does everything have to be about secrets?" Why do people in these shows always have to talk about keeping secrets from each other and complain that other people keep secrets, blah 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 blah. But if you have a secret, but if you have an alternate identity, if you're leading a double life, those kinds of things are gonna have to come. I think it's just that it seems like we always talk about it in exactly the same way, and a lot of the same lines of dialogue come up, and that kind of irks me. One of my, I guess I'll mention this again later, but one of the things that annoyed me about this episode was, and I love this one overall, but you get to the end, and once again, just like we have an Arrow, probably no less than 4 or 5 times, we have to have that line of "no more secrets." Can we just quit saying "no more secrets," please? Can we just not say that anymore? Because you know what's going to happen later on. One of them's going to keep a secret from the other one and go, and the other one's going to figure it out, and then they're going to go, "Well, I thought we said no more secrets." I mean, you're not going to surprise me when that happens.
I think Flash has the potential to do it differently in that if Iris doesn't figure out who the Flash is by the end of the season and Joe West dies, that could be an interesting direction to go in.
Yeah, that would kind of turn that on its head a little bit, wouldn't it?
I would really like if they did that. I mean, it would pain me to see Joe West die because I like him a lot, but
yeah,
in a drama sense, if I was writing the show, that's where I would probably go.
Yeah, and you keep saying, it seems like every week your big suggestion for the show is, okay, for the sake of drama, do this, but when you do it, I'm gonna stab you in the face.
That's the Joss Whedon method, right? Make you fall in love with a character and then kill them.
Yeah, and that's the paradox, right? That like we love that kind of drama and we praise shows, or I do, I praise shows like Buffy and Angel for doing that kind of thing because it's fantastic. I think kind of masterful drama. Now when it becomes formulaic, when you go, okay, if these two characters get together, I know one has to die 30 seconds after they get together, then that becomes problematic. But it's a bit of a paradox when we go, I love these characters together, and it's my favorite thing about this show. But I know that if we do something horrible to them, we'll have this great drama, and that's the difficulty with storytelling. You have to have conflict. You have to put your characters through crucibles.
Right, and I wouldn't put it past the show, given what I've heard about Arrow and how they're not afraid to kill off characters like Oliver Queen's mom. And she was a pretty major character, at least from what I've seen of the show so far.
Yeah, and okay, do you mind? I'm sorry. Do you mind if I take this in a different direction for a second?
Yeah, sure.
And now that you've mentioned her, because there's no better moment to bring this up since you just said Moira Queen. I noticed I thought of another parallel in the way they're writing this show and the way they write Arrow that I didn't think of before this, and it's kind of funny because we didn't get another Wells is doing scary stuff behind the scenes scene at the end of this, but I thought of it at this episode instead of last episode because of Felicity being here and her drawing a lot of comparison contrast that I've been drawing explicitly in the episode. Like, Felicity just comes out in some places and says, our show is like yours, except it's not.
Yeah, that is true.
And I'll talk about this a little bit later when we get into Felicity stuff, but there's one thing in particular that she brings up that I hadn't thought of, but there's some other stuff that she talks about, like especially the thing about their team coming together immediately versus Arrow's team being over time. I said that the first episode, and it was weird to hear Felicity come right out and say, "Hey, look at this thing. That's different." Well, it made me think of this. Wells and Moira have a lot in common.
Oh, interesting.
Because Moira is played up early on in Arrow as the as the family member, or in the case of Wells, the friend and mentor who is doing duplicitous stuff behind the scenes and doesn't want her son to know about it. Now, what their interests and goals are very different, but it's a similar structure, and I'm hoping it's not too similar, because again, there are some places where I kind of look at this and I go, okay, so you guys just looked at what you did in first season Arrow and you kind of adapted it to Flash, because you had her like several times. You'd get to the very end of an episode and it'd be like, okay, and Moira's doing this thing behind the scenes.
Yeah,
We had
I
the same
just got
thing
to
else going on.
the first episode where they have that kind of thing at the end recently, where she's in the limousine and she's talking about the list.
Yeah, and they do that with her in some other places after that too, and they're doing it with Wells. Now, they don't have her stabbing him in the face, but
Yeah.
so I mean they are very different characters, but I'm seeing a similar structural thing. So I don't know. I'm a little conflicted because sometimes I'm impressed with the ways that they're repeating themselves, and sometimes I'm questioning that they're repeating themselves.
Right, and I hope that this ends up being a polar, like, because you can spoil this for me if you want. Like, Moira Queen, does she end up being completely nefarious?
No,
Okay, so I
not
think
completely.
I think where they're going to go with Wells is he's completely and utterly nefarious by the end of this.
That's what I hope, just in comparison. But I also think that he's going to be a little bit more complicated than just nefarious.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. When I say that, I mean, from our perspective, he's nefarious, but he's going to have a legitimate motivation from his twisted perspective for what he's.
the big difference between them is that Moira wasn't the mastermind.
Oh, okay, okay.
With Moira, there's somebody else kind of pulling her strings, and she feels boxed in and forced to do what she's doing.
Oh,
Clearly, Wells is the guy.
yes, yes.
Or at least I sure hope so.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make any sense for him to have, like the end of next episode, he pulls out a mother box and he's like, "Hi, Darkseid."
Oh, I hope not. I hope not.
If they do that, I hope that he looks better than he did in Smallville, and that he's not just possessing people.
And I hope they just make him Thanos, because Thanos is cooler.
Well, hey, let's go ahead and get into this episode, delving more into it than we have already. And where do you want to start, Dan?
Let's start with the best thing about this episode.
All right.
The fact that there's an awesome villain in this show, finally. And
I'm with you. That's the best thing, sure.
Captain Cold is utterly fantastic in this episode, and I can already see them seeding some of the parallels between him and Barry's personality that's going to make them like arch enemies in the future. Because
yes,
Captain Cold is the Dr. Octopus of the Flash, and Reverse Flash is like the Green Goblin. You can make an argument for either one, which one's their arch enemy, and I really love that Captain Cold identifies Barry's empathy as his weakness.
Right.
And if you know anything about Captain Cold's like backstory and stuff, his empathy in his real life is also kind of his greatest weakness, because the reason that he goes into crime is because his sister is sick and ill, and he needs to get money to cure her of her disease and stuff. It's kind of like the Sandman thing from Spider-Man 3, but he realizes that he's a terrible person. Like he realizes that he has to do terrible things.
It's okay for me to break the law.
Yeah, so he's a really kind of tragic character, and that's what I've liked about Captain Cold in all the stories I've read with him. So I like that he identifies Barry's weakness as the same thing that kind of plagues him in his real life. It's like Barry's weakness in the superhero persona is his greatest strength in real life. But with Captain Cold, it's reversed. His empathy is his greatest weakness in real life, but it's also kind of, not able to be used in his criminal, persona at all. Like, he has to be ruthless and calculating all the time.
Well, and so far though in this show we've only seen the one side of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we don't know that he has any kind of compassion in his personal life, because we haven't seen any disconnection between his personal life and his professional life. We've only seen the professional Captain Cold so far, and so moving forward, I would imagine they'll go there, Dan. I would imagine they'll give him a family of some kind, and we'll see that he's not actually a heartless monster, that there's more to him than that. But I think setting him up this way in the first place and making him seem like that's all there is to him is really interesting, mostly because I know how these guys write with Arrow, and they've done this sort of thing before where they'll introduce a character and then you find out that there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I really liked too that both of them kind of have like the strength that Captain Cold has over Barry, and like it's weird because it's almost like Captain Cold is more experienced than Barry in being a masked vigilante kind of person before Barry is even the Flash, because he's already kind of doing that. Like
That's a good point. Yeah.
he operates in a mask with a crew and goes out and robs people. So
Yep.
he like realizes how to be resourceful and has street smarts and he's calculating and stuff. Where Barry, like we see in this episode, Felicity is totally into him. Like he doesn't have street smarts and like people skills at all, really, other than people that really get to know him and stuff. So I really like that they paralleled their, you know, differences in how they deal with people. Like Captain Cold is immediately able to read people and what their weaknesses are and exploit them, whereas Barry doesn't know how to do that at all. Like not that Barry would be exploitive because that's not who he is, but he doesn't realize how to get what he wants really in his personal life, and Captain Cold does.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see why, like I'm saying, why exactly he's so good at reading people.
And I would imagine it's because they say in here, which I liked, they kind of hinted that they came out and said it actually, that he you know barely or wasn't able to graduate high school. He kind of dropped out, and I would imagine that might be because his sister you know fell ill and his father was never there for him. He was a you know an alcoholic and used to beat them, and they had to live with their grandfather, and then the grandfather dies in the comics, and they're kind of left on their own to raise themselves. So I would imagine that he probably dropped out of high school just to do that kind of stuff and make you know be the breadwinner at you know age 17 or whatever. So he probably learned those skills out of necessity. Whereas Barry, you know, he could have been abandoned by, you know, after his father went to jail, but somebody took him in and, you know, gave him a chance and loved him. Whereas nobody gave Captain Cold that opportunity.
Yeah, and I would imagine that's where they're going with it, especially given that we're not doing a lot of straight up reimagining in the show. I mean, a lot of this is very straight up adapt what was in the comics.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping they go there because all of the parallels are sort of hinted at and are apparent in this episode if you know the character. So
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that they go there.
Yeah, it's just too interesting not to do that. I feel like this episode is a lot more about those mass personas and just setting up the classic superhero stuff up front so that we can
Right.
play with the human drama later. And I like that they did that because we once again do have the whole you wouldn't have the supervillain without the superhero thing, and is it worth having the superhero stepping in when he is inspiring the supervillain too much. There, you've got that Nolan escalation thing again, which we've got going, and it's funny too because we've got that going on in Arrow right now with Vertigo. And it seems like they might be doing even some season thematic parallels between the two shows,
Oh, interesting.
because with Captain Cold, if Barry hadn't stepped in and done anything, yeah, those people would have gotten robbed and folks would have died, but he wouldn't have had any reason to go get the cold gun. And the cold gun is changing his entire modus operandi. It's changing his whole. He's gonna. I can kind of. I feel like I can tell he's building a whole persona around this. And I mean, like he's not totally changing. He still has the ideology and the way of doing things that he did before, but he is fully embracing this. Yeah, I'm a costume supervillain now. Like
I love
like
how he
that's
has a
I love that he says. I love that he thanks Flash for it.
Yeah, I like that too, and I love that he already has a predisposition to cold puns. It's awesome.
He just already has it. Well, I don't know. I would think that was more awesome if I hadn't seen it so much in Smallville.
Oh, really? Okay.
And again, some folks get annoyed with me for bringing that show up in kind of Smallville bashing, but watch Counting Crypto Freaks. It's just how I feel about that show. I have a love hate relationship, and so you know, there's some of what I say in good fun, and so, sometimes I'm just annoyed. But the thing, but anyway, so the thing there is, I would have maybe appreciated that predilection for saying that kind of stuff early before he gets the gun more if we weren't also doing it with every other character in the episode.
Yeah, that's kind of true.
And that's where I evoke Smallville, because that kind of thing strikes me as a little bit too gimmicky, and it's really comic book. So I mean, like, I can kind of see where it's like, well, where do we draw the line? We're just having fun with theme writing, but I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is, with that character, I'd love to say, hey, it was just prophetic. He had kind of this. Look, his personality is cold, so we have a physical cold thing. That's very comic book. His whole personality was kind of prophetic for becoming Captain Cold, but it's kind of deflated a little bit when he keeps saying cold things before he gets the cold gun. But then we've got all these other people in the episode before Captain Cold becomes Captain Cold, and even after that, but nobody knows about it yet, that are also saying cold things.
Yeah,
I don't know. I could have done without some of that.
you're probably right. I was probably just blinded by my giddiness for seeing one of my favorite DC villains on the screen saying gold buns. Like that may have been my bias in that regard.
Oh, dude, that's totally fair. I mean, I don't know a lot about Captain Cold. As I've said before, part of the reason I have Dan on the show is because I don't know Flash
Right,
that
right.
well. But my favorite Flash villain is Captain Boomerang, and so when they bring Boomerang in and they have everybody else before he even becomes Captain Boomerang saying things about stuff going away and coming back to them, I'm gonna be like, yeah, that's awesome. No,
I
I'm really not. I,
I
but
did research the Rogues because this episode does a lot to set them up, and it is confirmed that Boomerang is showing up first in Arrow. Interestingly enough,
yeah, I knew about that. That's awesome.
I'm gonna have to watch that episode when it happens because Boomerang's one of my favorites too. I like Captain Boomerang a lot.
I'm hoping for a Clock King Captain Boomerang crossover or team up. That's what I want.
That would be awesome. I wouldn't be surprised if he teams up with one of the Suicide Squad people too, because he's been in that team before, from what I understand. Right?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool, cool. I
Yeah,
didn't know if I
yeah,
was wrong about that because I haven't read a ton
no.
of Suicide Squad.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I didn't know that until recently. I had to look up Suicide Squad stuff, and I saw him on a list, and I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." So yeah, I think you're right about that. Uh, I did a wiki search at one point, and I saw that. Anyway, so I think the episode title is interestingly ironic because uh Captain Cold by the end has not gone rogue. He's teaming up with another person.
Yes, and we mentioned the human drama stuff coming up in like his family and things. Him and Heatwave have a very intimate relationship out of any of the rogues. Like they have a kind of brother thing going on.
Cool.
So and they cast his co-star from Prison Break, the other big guy, the
Uh
big
huh.
character from that show as Heatwave. So I'm very
Oh, so these guys have a history. That's cool.
yeah, I'm very excited to see two actors have a history together play two characters that have a history
That
together.
that may have something to do with why at the end they concealed his face and just had his voice and didn't really show you his face.
Yes.
Like, I think they're making a big deal out of, for anybody that's a Prison Break fan, we got these two guys together. Like, sometimes shows will do nods to other shows actors were in, and it'll sometimes go over my head. But when it's a show I know and I catch it, I'm like, oh, that's really cool.
Hmm.
So I didn't know that. So I bet anybody that was a fan of that show looked at that and went, oh yeah, it's that guy. I know that voice.
Yeah, and I have his name written down for the guest stars. Let's see, his name is Dominic Purcell. I'm not familiar with Prison Break really at all. I've seen like trailers for it, and that's about it. I know what the
Yeah,
guy looks like, but based on the performance of the guy who played Captain Cold in this, Wentworth Miller, if the guy they cast as Heatwave is anywhere near as good as him, it's going to be great because I loved his performance in this episode. I thought he was fantastic.
yeah, I like how good he is at calling bluffs.
Yes.
I just thought that was really neat, and I think that Cisco is kind of uh, a step somewhere between Flash, who is fully, completely empathetic, can see both sides to everything, and Captain Cold, who is at least so far presented as, or wants to present himself as, empathy is a weakness, survival of the strongest. Shoot me now, or I will come find you and kill you later.
Yeah.
And what Cisco is really super cautious.
Yeah, and that scene at the end too, with the vacuum and everything. You mentioned
Yeah.
Captain Cold calling bluffs. Since he was calling every single person's bluff in the episode, I had a hard time believing that he didn't know that it was a bluff the whole time and was just like, "Hey, I owe Flash for me like getting this power in the first place. I'll let him go and deal with him later if I have to."
That is a potential and that is a possible interpretation. We could already now. This is maybe reading too far into things. I hadn't thought about it like that, Dan, and I'm going to argue with you in a second. But you may
Sure,
be right
sure.
about it. That's an interesting take on it. It could be, and again, I may be reading too far into this when I say this. It could already be a little bit of that yin yang hero villain thing of who am I without you, where Captain Cold kind of there's like some part of him that's like subconsciously going, well, this guy helped me become the man I am today. Not just I owe him, but I kind of want to see where things go with this relationship.
Yeah, potentially.
Maybe. Potentially, I don't know. I mean, like it's too early. He's probably not thinking about it in those terms really yet. But there's got to be a part of him that, to some degree, like respects the Flash.
Right. Yeah, I think that's always a thing that's been with the Rogues too. They kind of have a mutual respect with the Flash, which is an interesting um, relationship between hero and villain that I've always liked. It's kind of unique. Um,
They embody the same world. It's like I can't have the lifestyle I have without. What's a villain without a hero?
right, exactly. Like whenever the Flash like goes away, the Rogues get like bummed out because they're like, oh, there's, we can do anything without the Flash here. It's
Yeah,
kind
do
of
we
like
do
the
what we
Joker
do
when
just because?
Batman goes away.
Yeah, do we do what we do just because we want money, or do we do what we do because we want a challenge?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it'll be interesting. I think we'll definitely have that yin yang thing going on once Captain Cold and the Flash. Like the Flash hasn't really given Captain Cold a reason to hate him yet. Like Captain Cold completely succeeded, and I like that. I like that the Flash like not only had his first failure in that he had to let somebody die because his
Yeah,
powers just weren't up to the task. The Flash didn't even catch the villain this time. He completely and utterly failed, and I like that.
no, that's a good
And
point.
I like that Captain Cold is the one that gave him his first failure. But I think that yin yang thing will come in once the Flash hands Captain Cold his first failure since he has superpowers.
Importantly, as a superhero thing, it's not pessimistic because, after all, Flash does save everybody at the end.
Yes.
So he fails in the sense that he doesn't catch the villain, but in how many even really idealistic and altruistic stories does the villain get away at the end?
And the interesting thing is like Captain Cold ends up being right at the end of the day too, because Barry saved everybody. He wasn't able to catch Captain Cold. Like if Barry had just ran out of the train, caught Captain Cold, and brought him to jail,
Yeah, exactly.
all potential problems with that guy
And that's
would have been
that's va-
solved.
that's validating his worldview.
Exactly.
Saying, well, I would have just killed those people because like whatever has to be done to get the job done. All you have to do is not care about anyone, and you can always win.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's how Captain Cold
And
sees the world.
eventually, I'm sure Flash will prove him wrong on that.
And that's the interesting paradox with Cold's character in the comics. He has the same exact worldview, but at the same time, he cares about his sister and Heatwave and the other rogues to some degree.
Yeah.
So it always like it's always a huge conflict with him. Like that's his outward persona. You mentioned that earlier. Like he wants to present himself in a certain way.
And
Uh,
he probably wishes he could be completely that way.
exactly,
But it's this optimistic look at human nature where it's like everybody has some degree of empathy unless you're insane.
exactly,
It
and
also tells you this guy's not crazy.
right, exactly, and that's why all of those like little seeds combined made me love his portrayal in the show so much. Because I think they got him spot on without giving us all of the depth that I know. There's like little hints to it here and there, which was really cool for me.
Well, let me give you my read on the scene with the vacuum cleaner,
Yeah, sure.
and tell you why I was able to completely buy that Captain Cold didn't completely call that bluff, and it's because if you look at what we're starting to build with Cisco in this and what he's capable of, that he builds an ice gun to stop the Flash regardless of Barry giving him no reason so far whatsoever to think that he might be dangerous. I had a little bit of an issue with Cisco's explanation for that. I'll get to that in a minute. It's minor, but just on paper, that idea. I think that the deal is if Cisco had a real working gun, he would have fired it.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And so the only thing that Captain Cold didn't call, he's good at calling bluffs. He's good at being able to see through people's emotional states, but he's not telepathic. The only thing he didn't know was that the machine doesn't work.
Well, I think it could be twofold, right?
And I think, but all I'm saying is, I think that tells you something about Cisco's character, and that's where I say that he's somewhere between Flash and Captain Cold, and I think that's telling because he's supposed to be a villain at some point too. Yes.
No, Vibe's a superhero.
Oh, Vibe's a superhero. Okay, I didn't know that. I thought somebody said something that he was kind of a bad guy, but I'm just saying that he is.
Maybe he is.
No, go ahead.
Maybe he is at some point. I don't know, but the reason that I thought Captain Cold called it, and it may be, you can read it in different ways. You can think, oh, Captain Cold thinks that this kid is too much of a wimp to kill someone, and that's why he calls his bluff, or that he doesn't believe in the technology. Either way, Captain Cold, like Cisco's like, give the diamond back, and he says, don't push your luck, and just walks away.
But see, the way I read that was he he knows that Cisco's not going to shoot him over that. I thought
right,
the idea,
which means he's good at reading him. He's calling his bluff not in that the technology doesn't work, in that I'm
right.
going to shoot you. Either way, he's calling somebody's bluff in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. But he called his bluff. What I'm saying is, I think that he let the first part go because he really thought that Cisco might shoot him there, but he knows that the kid doesn't have the gumption to shoot him over the diamond thing.
But why would he
Yeah,
have a difference of guts because of a diamond or Barry? I don't get it. Like, why would his gut reaction to shooting somebody change in that situation?
because one's about saving a person and one's about saving an object,
I mean, I suppose so.
right?
But like,
So when
wouldn't he have
he's
shot
like,
him over? Like, why didn't he just shoot him, save Barry, and then take the diamond in the first place?
well, I mean, yeah,
Had the
that's a
guts
good
to.
point.
That's what I'm.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's why I
I
think Captain Cold read him and was able to call it. That's what I'm saying. You know.
yeah, but then if he didn't uh in the first place call it when he was like, okay, fine, I'll let Flash go. Then the only way that works is if you're right about the motivation in the first place with your read on it.
I mean, I guess, yeah, sure. Um,
Unless he's just humoring him or something. I don't know.
I just think from the time that Cisco showed up, he's like, yeah, this kid is no trouble to me, and he let Barry off for uh, the reasons where he's like, thanks for helping me up my game and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a totally fair read. I think it could potentially go either way.
Right? Yeah.
I want to talk about Cisco for a second, because there is. Let me backtrack for a second and say that I said that I thought that if he had a real gun, he would probably fire it. Now he does have that line right after that where he has this sigh of relief and was like, "I would not have had the gumption to do that." But
Yeah.
I still kind of question that a little bit, given that he built the gun. I don't know. I think he would have had to actually be in that moment and actually have a real working gun, but before he could know that about himself. Um, but anyway, I don't know. I questioned a little bit his explanation for building the snow gun, because the snow gun, yes, it shoots snowballs. Yeah, the freeze gun, because he says that he says, what if, Barry, you turned out to be a psychopath? And I didn't get any sense whatsoever early on that he had anything but trust for Barry for the moment he met him.
Yeah. I mean, the relationship between those characters has always been kind of friendly initially, like you said. So I maybe it was the kind of thing where he heard about the fact that this guy got powers before he actually met him. I don't know. Like, does he meet him right after the hospital, like when he wakes up with the powers?
That was my question. What was the timetable? How did he
Yeah.
even have enough time to build that in the first place? Because I didn't get because he said, well, that was before I knew you. So he did it a while ago. He
Yeah.
didn't just finish it and all, like. So I would be questioning how in the world he had enough time to make to invent this thing in the first place. Like obviously it's just comic book. Well, he's a genius. Um, but I think I would have been more okay with the whole thing if he had said something more along the lines, if it had been more of like a Batman versus Superman thing where it was like, well, what if like we can't trust this power. I trust you, but I don't trust the power.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Maybe
what if you're
yeah.
mind controlled, or what if you went crazy? Like, even if he'd said, "What if you went crazy?" over "What if you were crazy?" I just didn't quite buy the explanation.
Yeah, that's true. I think, yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that it would have been better to say, I built this gun retroactively in case you, went crazy or, lost your way and started misusing your powers. Like, there's always the potential, the Spider-Man thing early on where you use your powers for personal gain rather than the greater good. And, that could be a concern. What if Barry starts out on this altruistic path and then eventually realizes that, like the thing he struggled with his dad in the previous episodes where he's like, I can just break my dad out of jail whenever I want. Barry's already been dealing with those sorts of things. So I think if they had went there, that would have made more sense even with the thematic through line of what they've been doing previously. It's kind of
Yeah.
a missed opportunity now that I think about it.
Let's go ahead and we're already coming up on an hour, so let's choose to do some things a little quicker. How did you feel this week about the Thawne stuff?
I thought that he was a little bit more sympathetic, just because the actor got a little bit more to do. I liked him a little bit more. Um, I
That's not saying much, is it?
Yeah,
But
no,
yes.
it's not. I mean, I thought that the scene with him and Joe in the car was funny up until he started turning the radio on. Like what Joe said to him when he was like, remember did I ever tell you about that
That's
time?
my friends.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that a
I
lot.
thought that was really funny. And then when he started putting the music about getting it on the radio, I was like, I didn't need that. It
I
was,
thought it was a little much.
yeah.
I don't know. Like, and I think they're trying to have fun with that, and I appreciate that because it does continue to be really typical. And just like I always immediately resist these kinds of love triangles, I also have a tendency to kind of resist the boyfriend fishing for approval thing. I mean, if I already really liked this guy, and here's the thing, I gotta root for that guy before I can appreciate the fishing for approval with the father thing, and I'm not rooting for that guy
No, I'm not either.
because I know I'm not gonna start liking Iris more until she's with Barry. So I just want that to hurry up and happen so that they can actually do character stuff with her, because I don't feel like she becomes a real character until she and Barry get to actually date. I don't know if I'm right about that, but that's my gut reaction.
I mean, in the context of the show, yeah, I'm with
Yeah,
you.
that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Because obviously that's all she's here for. Right now, she's just here so that Barry has this like really sad, conflicted, I don't get to date this girl thing. And right now, I'm not buying it. Bringing in Felicity this episode was the best and worst idea they've had this season.
It was because the thing with Iris that became more apparent to me as I watched this episode is that she just doesn't like smart people.
Yeah.
It's very strange. Like, who doesn't like people that are smart?
Well, kind of. What's weird though is that I don't know if the writers have anything like a handle on her character yet. I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt on this, because if I read too far into it, it will all fall apart. Okay, so she doesn't like smart people, but she's really super stoked to go to the trivia tournament.
Yeah, it's very
Okay,
strange.
that doesn't make a lot of sense. You said that Fawn became more sympathetic to you with the stuff with West. I agree with you. Where he became less so again for me was when he's at trivia night and people are simply talking about history, and he goes, "They're not speaking English."
And he doesn't know
I'm sorry.
The Millennium Falcon's name either.
I feel like he's saying, yeah, and that was a thing too, where I was like, really, we're gonna have a team of Star Wars geeks that are cosplaying and be like, oh well, of course they know that. Who doesn't know that?
And they were the only people in the trivia night that were cosplaying too.
Yeah, well, I got the sense that they might have been the only people there who knew what the Millennium Falcon was. I don't know, like that whole thing was really silly to me, and that seemed like TV. Like, okay, we've got to make it something that people have heard of. We can't go too obscure. But the problem is when you do that, it all breaks down because we live in a culture that has, in a lot of ways, very much embraced geekdom, and where a lot of things that used to be more obscure aren't anymore. So when you do that kind of thing, like I've seen Big Bang Theory do this before too, where they're acting like something's really obscure, but me being in this like geek superhero world, I know it's not.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, not to belabor this point, but I was just like, really, like who doesn't know what the Millennium Falcon is? But worse than that was fun. Like, oh, history. What are you saying? Like I feel like most people have heard of half the things they were talking about there. At least heard of those things.
Yeah. I mean, he came off as kind of like a blunt instrument of law enforcement, I guess.
Well, maybe, now, to be fair, maybe that's the idea, is that that's what he knows, that's all he cares about.
Yeah, and he's good at it, and they demonstrate that in this episode, which
Yes.
his competence made me like him a lot.
Well, you're right, and I guess the thing that does make him a lot more likable is that he doesn't listen to West and insists on having his back regardless of West's reasons for not liking him and his daughter dating, and they made West more okay with sort of with their dating by the end, because he realized he can't like hold himself constantly accountable for that guy's well-being just because his daughter is dating him. And so there's a lot of, okay, we got to go through this part so that we don't have to go through this anymore.
Yeah.
In the last couple episodes, we've had some of that where it's like, okay, I don't like that I have to watch this happen, but it gets to where it needs to by the end, so yay. But then that makes me go, I don't know why we had to do any of this in the first place.
At least there wasn't a scene where they start sucking face and you don't know why it's happening. I was happy that didn't occur again.
Here's an idea. If the CW has another show that spun out of this continuity, could we have a superhero and his or her significant other already together in the first place? Could we maybe start one there? That'd be really nice.
I know it would, wouldn't it?
Could we start with a married couple? There's a thing we don't do with superheroes. Oh wait, no, we can't do that because these shows want people to read 52.
Well, I heard that they're already casting people for the Supergirl show, and
Wait, for what?
For the Supergirl show, they started casting.
I think you said superhero. Oh, they're casting for the superhero show. I'm like, that sounds kind of generic. What is that?
That would be really funny. But yeah, they started casting for that, and I don't know anything about Supergirl solo comics. So, does she have a boyfriend that she is with? I'm sure she does, right?
Not really. I mean, most of the Supergirl stuff I've read, she's single and like she'll date people, but I can't think of like definitive. Now, I'm not a giant Supergirl fan. I'm a big fan of 52 Supergirl now, but obviously, that's different.
Right.
But and she just now started dating somebody in that. But I mean, like, I can't think of what the definitive Supergirl significant other is. If there is one, somebody leave it in the comments. I don't know what that is. If there is such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably someone from the Legion of Superheroes or something. And whenever they show up in a comic, I get confused. So I avoid.
Me too. Yes, yeah. You and I talked about that at length when we reviewed Morrison's Action. Dan, you know what there should be? There should be a show called The Superhero Show, and it should be like a revolving door show where every week we just go to some other superhero universe and tell a one and done story. That would be so cool.
That would be cool. It would be like the Twilight Zone, but for superheroes. It'd be cool.
Yeah, exactly. In an anthology superhero show.
Or we could make it a spin-off of the superhero movie.
Or you could stop talking. No. The note I made in that scene with Thawne at the trivia night was, Thawne, read a book. Read a book.
Yeah, that whole scene was just kind of weird, other than Felicity and Barry being adorable. And they
Yeah.
made those two characters more compatible to me in one episode than I mean, Iris and Barry definitely have chemistry, but like I want to see Barry and Felicity get together now. Like they were
Uh,
awesome together.
yeah, and you're saying that having not seen them in Arrow, they were already adorable there. But I liked them even a heck of a lot more here and together. And the thing is, like, when I say could we please do a show where we have a couple together already, I'm looking at them and going, let's just restructure this whole show, bring her away from Arrow, put her in the show, have them dating and always dating, and have that be like an unbreakable relationship, because that would, I feel like it would work.
I think it would too. Um,
And what drove me crazy was, well, there's a couple things about Felicity that drives me nuts,
yeah.
because I don't think that the decision they make at the end fits with what they're doing with her in Arrow.
I don't think it fit with what they did with her in this episode either, but go ahead. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, there's some stuff with this. So I feel like we've got a really contrived reason for those two to not be dating just because they're in different shows and the respective series feel the need to address it. I like that they're addressing it. I like that it's not just they never see each other again because they're in different shows. But the
Hmm.
problem is, and like, because you can't do the long distance relationship thing because he could be at her doorstep in like 30 seconds.
Right.
So like it's not like they wouldn't date just because they live in different cities. So you do have to address it. Okay, so the whole idea is he is too in love with Iris to date her. Well, the problem is he seemed like, and I mean, I haven't seen these episodes since last season, so maybe I'm remembering this somewhat wrong, but it seemed to me like he was kind of pursuing her in Arrow, and like he there was a mention of Iris, and he kind of wished that he could be with her, but it wasn't working out, so he was kind of sort of thinking about dating Felicity. What has changed? Like nothing's really changed. And then the thing with Felicity is, at the beginning of the season, she and Oliver go on a date,
Yeah.
and they consider trying to date, and he said last season that he loved her, and there was a whole thing. So the reason that they're not together is because something happened, she almost died, and Oliver's decided to give up his personal life completely and be the Arrow full time. And she tells him at the end of that episode, basically, I don't want to be in a yo-yo relationship, so you have to say this will never happen. You can't just say maybe, because he basically says maybe someday, and she's like, no, if you're breaking it off completely now, it must be forever. I don't buy Felicity not dating. Like, maybe it's too early, but I don't buy her like pining away for Oliver for very long, because she's the one that said, I don't want to date you ever if it's gonna be like this, and that's the way it's gonna be. So here's my worry. Part of what I take issue with is a thing that hasn't happened yet, but I really kind of see. So hopefully I'm wrong about this. I really think that she's going to get together this season at some point with Ray Palmer, and if that happens, it kills this.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't
Well,
happen.
do you see what I'm saying? If Felicity won't date Barry, who she is completely compatible with, and they are really, really into each other, and they clearly should be dating, she should not date anyone for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention, like you said, especially in this episode, like there's points where you can tell, especially in the trivia night, where Felicity is like kind of disappointed by the fact that Barry won't make advances on her, like the faces that she makes and stuff.
Yeah,
The actress
yeah.
is playing it up like, I really wish you'd make an advance on me right now. Like she seems like she's really into him.
And that dress she wore,
Yeah,
which Iris makes a big deal out of, but I mean, it's obvious she wants that to happen. I kind of wasn't sure that I bought her whole "I can tell that you're into Iris" thing.
I mean, I could kind of see that because there were times when Iris would like try to get them to talk to each other, and Barry would just be busy like googly eyeing Iris, and then Felicity would kind of be like looking at the table, like, "Oh, I wish he was looking at me right
No,
now."
you're probably right. Well, then the question should have been, hey, how come you're more into her than me? Because I'm cooler than her.
Yes, and she doesn't like smart people.
Yeah. So I don't know, this whole opposites attract thing. I'm not saying it's not ever true, but these two just fit together too well, and I'm having a tough time believing that both of them are having that at the same time. I really think it's manufactured.
I think so too. I didn't buy the thing at the end, especially like they kiss and she looks like mesmerized by the fact that they kiss and she's like bye Barry and he's like yeah like yelling woohoo as he runs away. That seems like the moment you have after he asks her out and she says yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's I don't know, it's just really weird.
It's worse. As I said, it's worse. I think with what they're doing with Arrow right now, because after what she's dealt with Oliver and everything, like it makes more sense for her to move to Central City right now than it probably ever will.
Hmm.
And yeah, she just got offered this like amazing job at the new Queen Consolidated, but she like turned it down originally, and I think at the point she turned it down, she had to have known that Barry was already out of his coma. I don't know why she didn't think to go there. The way I would have done this is I would have had her come to Central City and had some reason to not like gone there considering living there and had some reason not to.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what it would have been, and I wouldn't have wanted it to be some kind of character drama thing of, oh well, I can't be with you because you like Iris. I wouldn't have wanted a love triangle between them really, like that. But some kind of reason that like maybe even an Arrow thing of, uh, they can't live without her in Starling City. She's got to go back because Oliver Queen. I mean because Arrow is nothing without her.
yeah, I mean, they even give like reasons for her to move there within the episode. This
Yeah.
episode too, like Wells is like, "You're a promising young woman. I've read up on your career. You're brilliant. You're special." It seems like he was like, "Hey, if you ever want to work here, the door's open."
By the way, that was the scene where I found myself going, okay, does he actually read up on everybody like that, or is she famous in the future?
Oh, I bet she is.
I think she's famous in the future.
I think so too. I think that's a very good possibility.
Uh, Dan, let's go ahead and go on to best moment, worst moment, shall we?
Sure, sure.
What was your favorite moment this episode, sir?
Uh, well, the my favorite moment outside of every time Captain Cold was on screen, uh, the stinger at the end that sets up the Rogues in Heatwave as a Flash fan, where he's like, "I have to get a new crew and all that kind of stuff." I was like, "Yes, yes, heck yes!" They're setting up the Rogues in episode 4. I can't wait for this to happen. It's gonna be awesome.
I'm having a tough time picking one because there's a couple things that I just really, really, really liked. Flash saving everyone in the train looked amazing.
Yes, it did.
And that was just like a really epic kind of heartwarming, yay, the hero's getting to save the day moment after he had to let somebody die earlier. I was really glad to see that. uh the opening with Flash playing chess and ping pong simultaneously was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was really cool. I liked that a
I
lot.
thought, I thought that was fun, and I liked the whole thing about Operation. I thought that was really funny. Also, don't you think that him playing chess with Wells must be foreshadowing?
Oh yeah, definitely. Everyone who good and evil characters in comic books always play chess, like in the X-Men movies, Charles
And
and
also,
Magneto.
like Wells winning so early, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think so too.
So that was cool. But honestly, the big one, uh, it's gotta be Felicity and Barry at the end, and like it's one of those I love it and hate it at the same time because I hate that they're going away from each other, but then with the kiss, I was like, see, they know this they should be together. They know this should work. I am not completely unconvinced that they're not gonna bring her into the show at some point for at least a long stint.
I hope so, because she's awesome. Like she hasn't. She showed up briefly in the Arrow episodes I've watched, and like I kind of got the vibe that she was a little bit awkward and stuff. But man, like seeing her interact with Barry here, I really like her. She's awesome.
What was your worst moment?
My worst moment was related to something we were talking about earlier. Why do they only bring a vacuum out of all the technology they have in Star Labs to that scene, and why do they let Captain Cold leave so easily? Like, it just seems
Yeah,
like a very manufactured kind of thing.
I mean, Wells was like, we don't make weapons, and so maybe they don't have anything else.
I mean, they have the technology on hand to make a supervillain prison. They gotta have something laying around, you know?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I'm with you, and I think they think that it was that they were just telling a really funny joke by having him go, "I've got just the thing," and then later it's a vacuum cleaner. Oh, okay, but no, I'm with you. How like how could he be sure that was going to work? That seems like a
Right.
bit of a stretch on his part. Yeah, I'm with you. I think mine. Well, no more secrets. Almost certainly, was my worst moment. But another one I want to mention. This is minor. Is I didn't like Cisco's reaction to Wells saying "never do anything like this again"
Oh,
at the
okay.
end. And here's the reason it bugged me. He grabs his arm, and I don't like the way the show is playing it because I don't. I'm just like I'm not buying that. Like they got the dark swelling music and stuff. Here's the thing: the show is saying, "Hey, look, he's going a little too far and letting one of the people he works with know that there's like maybe accidentally telegraphed too much that he's got this dark side." The problem is what he did would have been completely in character without us knowing about the future well stuff and without the dark, scary music.
Well, I want to talk about that in predictions. I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit, but
Okay, but
I had a different read on that scene.
all I'm saying though is that after what happened and somebody died, if that guy was purely just good and altruistic and did that, I would not be even remotely surprised.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's what I would do. You know, like is it scary because he grabbed his arm? I don't get it.
Well, see, I'll tell you what my read on that scene was here,
All
and
right. Yeah.
it's kind of in predictions. I hope that the reason that Wells is angry at Cisco is because he had hoped to stop the Rogues and Captain Cold from existing in the first place, and it gets
Oh, sure.
stolen, and that's why he's so angry at him. Uh,
That's great, but all no, and that's all fine. I'm complaining about Cisco's reaction to it
mhm.
because Cisco's reaction and the way the scene is played is like, hey, that's weird. Why is he acting like this right now? I don't know that like his reasoning for it is different than obviously what anybody would have thought it was, but I still don't see why Cisco wouldn't be like, oh yes, of course he's being really stern right now because I got somebody killed.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're just taking issue with how the actors played it. Okay, I understand.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and how it was edited together and how they played the music. Like
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel like they're trying. No, I don't have any problem with the fact that he did that and that we knowing he's from. All I'm saying is, I think that it's not giving the audience enough credit. It's like, oh look, he's being scary. Yeah, but we've seen him knife a guy. Like we're gonna know it. They did it earlier in the episode. They had him be a little bit harsher, and nobody was surprised he was being harsh. But the audience knew that there was another layer to it. Why did they play it like this here?
I don't
That's
know.
all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I understand what you're saying now.
I think that's problematic. But yes, I like your prediction, and I think you're right about it.
Can I want to add another worst moment too, because you talking about Cisco added another thing popped in my brain that I thought was kind of terrible.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
um, there's a line where Caitlin Snow, I said her name right for the record. Um,
Caitlin Cold.
Caitlin Snow asks Cisco what his cold gun can do, and he says ominously, "Bad stuff."
Oh, I
I
know.
was like,
I'm
that is
so
a
glad you said
terrible
that.
line.
That is right. That is right along the same lines as Mr. Riker. What's going on down there? Trouble.
Yeah, I laughed out loud when that came on when I was watching it when it aired. And my buddy was like, "What?" I was like, "That was one of the worst lines I've ever heard."
Dan, did you have a favorite quote? You gave us a least favorite quote. Did you have a favorite quote?
My favorite quote is long, and maybe you don't want me to read it, but it's the entire monologue from the Stinger.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
That's my favorite thing, because I don't know. I really liked my fanboy giddiness aside. I really liked the way that Wentworth Miller played that scene, and I liked that we were teased for Flash fans. If you're a Flash fan, you know who Mick Rory is, and him with the matches and stuff. I mean, I suppose it's kind of obvious because like,
Yeah.
you still like playing with fire.
Well, it's like, okay, like for guys like me, I don't really know anything about Heatwave. I didn't like, I had to look that up. I didn't know immediately who that was, but it because I'm not a Flash guy. But like most people watching it go, okay, naturally there's a fire guy.
I don't know. I just love when he was talking about how things have changed, and if he wants to keep working in the city, he's going to need a new kind of crew. And I love when he was like saying, you're tolerant of extremes. You have a certain set of skills. You just need some direction, and I can give that to you. I was like, that's a really good kind of description of what's going on here. I thought that was funny and telling at the same time.
Well, Dan,
Like somebody who's tolerant of
yes,
extremes.
yeah. I didn't think that this episode was as quotable as far as one-liners and things go as they have been before this. Like weirdly, I didn't have Felicity line. Usually in Arrow I have Felicity lines. And I mean like I thought the writing was good. There just wasn't anything that jumped out at me as writing down worthy. But Caitlin. Playing Operation and saying this isn't even remotely anatomically correct, I thought was really funny.
That was funny.
Now, her age, I don't buy that she didn't grow up with Operation. Whereas,
Yeah,
like,
I grew up
first
in
time you've
Operation.
ever seen Operation, no freaking way. You have an American accent. There's no way.
She was
Uh,
so cold and isolated as a child that no one played Operation with her. How sad would that be?
and then also Barry's Snart's dad is in prison too. We should start a club.
That's funny. Yeah,
I mean,
I
the way
did
he
like
said it
that.
was kind of sad, and stuff, but that was an okay line. So obviously guest stars we've talked about. We got Felicity, we got the guy playing Captain Cold. Um, Comic references. So obviously we got Captain Cold, we've got Heatwave. Almost as bad as Bartholomew. Yeah, I see what you did there. Notice that wasn't in my favorite line section. Was there anything else you found?
Yes, there was.
Go ahead.
So when they're in the museum, they're in a Hall of Heroes, which I assume is some sort of reference to the Flash Museum again. Um,
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
yeah, exactly. There's a location called out by the police. I forget when it's said, but someone mentions the street Fourth and Collins, and Collins is the artist that drew most of Jeff Johns' run with him and all of the big important Captain Cold stories. So I thought that was
I
cool to
missed
reference
that.
him in there.
In these shows, whenever there's a street corner, if I don't recognize a name, I always look it up
Yeah.
because they almost always do that. And a couple episodes ago in Arrow, they did a street corner, and it wasn't anything, and I was like, "What? It wasn't
Really?
anything this time? That's crazy."
That is
Yeah.
crazy.
So I didn't even catch that. I just didn't even hear that there was a street name called.
Yeah, and then there's the reference Felicity when she's talking about Barry on the treadmill, voicing her concern. She's like, "What is he going to just be dust in a red costume?" And that's a reference to when he's going back in time in Crisis on Infinite Earths, Barry, and he runs through time and turns into dust in a red costume.
Oh, good call. I didn't even think of that.
And then Mick Rory, the reference to
Right.
Heatwave, obviously. So those were all the ones that I caught. I'm sure I missed some because I missed the obvious one about the Flash Museum last week. So I'd love to hear if you guys caught any ones that I didn't notice.
And obviously, several fun Arrow things. Something that I should also praise this episode for is doing the crossover thing right. There's not. I've seen like spin-off shows in their first season, like trying to rely really heavily on the first show to get ratings. Obviously, this show's not having that problem. Like they don't have to do that. It's doing as well or better than Arrow right now,
Mhm.
so it can go on its own steam. So when it crosses stuff over, it's because they both exist in the same universe. It's a comic book thing. These guys like these characters and they just want to do it. And so there's not any, okay, the show's not on its own 2 feet yet. We have to bring in Arrow characters. I like that it doesn't feel like that. And part of the reason it doesn't too is because when they do references to Arrow, they're not generic. Like they talk about really specific things. I thought it was really cool that Felicity likened the treadmill to Oliver's salmon ladder.
Oh yeah.
Because that thing that he does, I know you're not as familiar with the show as me, Dan, but that thing he does when he has the bar and he climbs up up to the top of the ceiling, he does that a lot in that show. That was the big thing that they put in the trailer for the show in the first place that everybody kept talking about. Oh wow, that looks really cool, and he does that a lot, and they talk about it sometimes. And Flash's training thing is his treadmill.
Yeah, and I've only seen I don't know what episode number I'm on, but I've seen a good amount of the first season of Arrow now, and I'm with you already. I'm thinking, wow, he does this a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah, I saw an interview with Stephen Bell once when he said that that is actually a lot easier than it looks.
Really? That's
And
interesting.
he said that because somebody asked, he was doing a Q&A, and somebody asked him, what is the hardest physical thing you've had to do on the show? And he said, well, you'd figure I'd say salmon ladder, but it isn't. And he said it's easier than you'd think it is. He said actually there was a time, and I don't even remember. Oh, actually, now that I think about it, I do know what he's talking about. He said there was a time in the first season when in the lair he had to climb a rope. It was just rope climbing. He's and I don't remember why. I don't remember what it was about it, but he said that it was the thing he had to do with the rope climbing was excruciating, and like it doesn't look impressive, so nobody knows what he went through. And I
That's
thought that
really
was really
funny.
funny. Let's go on to predictions and hopes, shall we? You gave us one already. Do you have any others, Dan?
My one hope is that there is more Captain Cold as soon as humanly possible, and that we delve more into his backstory and get the stuff about his sister, all the stuff that I kind of mentioned before, bring those parallels more to the forefront. I am hoping that the lame villain trend of the past 3 episodes ends with this episode. I'm hoping that we're gonna.
It's not going to end. You'll see more of that. You won't see as much probably, but there will still be some of that.
Okay, well,
I think. I mean, Arrow still does it every now and again.
okay, well, maybe it's just wishful thinking on my part, but I was just hoping that now that we introduce one of the rogues that we kind of get the introduction of them and stuff. But fair enough. I guess maybe we'll see some here, now and again. I wouldn't mind if they're not necessarily Flash rogue villains, part of his rogues gallery, as long as we do something with them other than what was done with the villains in the past 3 episodes. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the thing. I don't mind so much not giving big major characterizations to those characters. You run the risk sometimes of them taking over. I get that. My thing is, I just don't want it to be formulaic where they all get beat in the last, like, couple minutes, like, really fast, really easily, and then they explain their whole motivation in, like, 10 seconds. And
Yeah,
we've been
exactly.
getting
That's
that,
what I'm saying
and
too.
it's worse in my head because we've been getting that in Gotham also.
That's funny.
So, okay, Dan, my big thing is I want Felicity in the show. I
Yeah,
just
I'm with
want
you.
her in the show. I want like I would now. I know you're a big Flash guy, so you wouldn't be okay with this. I would be fine with kill Iris to get Felicity in the show, or ship her off someplace, or have her join the League of Assassins, or whatever. Just get rid of Iris
Oh
somehow,
my
so
god,
that I can have
Iris in the
Felicity
League of
in the show.
Assassins. That would be
Yes,
fun.
because that's one of the things we do in this universe when we want to get rid of someone is we have them go off with the League of Assassins. But anyway, or get killed by them or something. But anyway, so I don't know. I'm hoping that I will come to really like Iris a lot. I think she is a really that honestly that's not gonna happen. But I probably won't ever come to like Isis, but I'm hoping to come to like Iris a lot more as time goes on, and that she can be more than just a plot device. But I think Felicity would be the perfect kind of character to if we wanted to do a reimagining and we didn't feel like we had to go straight up a classic superhero comic. Let them date for a long time. Let them get married. Those two characters belong together. You can still have let's beat the one more day thing and show people how you can have a stable relationship with a superhero and it still be a good dramatic show.
Well, it's interesting you say that too, because what I've read of 52 Flash, and I read it for a little while, and I just kind of dropped off because I lost interest in it after they stopped doing stuff with the Rogues. There's a woman that Barry's dating in that, and she looks and has a similar personality to Felicity. Her name is Patty. She's got blonde hair and glasses and is kind of nerdy. She's a forensic scientist, so she's into the kind of you know, what's the word for it? Smart stuff, I guess, in contrast to what Iris is into in this show. So and I like the chemistry between the two of them in that comic book. So it's I would be cool with them dating at least for a little while.
Um, and then the other thing is, I want a Captain Cold Christmas special.
Yes.
I want it. I want that really bad. I think that would be, and I'm not even joking. I think that would be a fantastic place to go for the season, the mid season closer.
I agree. Oh, and one other hope I have in relation to Captain Cold, I hope that he keeps the gun and doesn't get powers like 52. I want Captain Cold to have his cold gun. No powers.
Well, and we didn't talk about this. That was the thing that I thought was kind of neat was that I'm almost less annoyed now about the three really generic metahumans thing because it's almost I would be giving them too much credit to take this to its furthest extent, but it's almost like the writers of this show are making a statement with that and saying that we've got somebody who's just a regular person and he's way scarier than these superpowered people who have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that I've always liked about the Rogues is they're just kind of schmucks that got technology, and that's the only reason why they can challenge the Flash in the first place. Like, I don't know, it's kind of this like inherent goofy charm to them. And like when they gave them powers in 52, I was like, they kind of lost that for me. So I'm hoping that there's no, accident with Captain Cold where he like gets coldness in his DNA or something stupid like that. I want him to keep his cold gun. I mean, obviously we know already that when the Weather Wizard comes back, because we saw his brother in the pilot, he'll probably have metahuman powers. He won't be using his wand, but I just want Captain Cold to use a gun because that's awesome.
Now, one thing I would be fine with, Dan, would be if like I'm only sort of joking when I say this would be like if Captain Cold were to get his own island or something and he had a bunch of a bunch of people under him that thought he was a really good ruler dictator guy and he had like a whole Doctor Doom thing going on and he was called Citizen Cold. I would be fine with that.
Oh, that would be so cool.
That was one of the minis in Flashpoint I really liked.
Yeah, I read that. And I really liked it. You know
Props
what
to
they
JT Kroll on that one. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I really liked that too. And I would be so down with a Captain Cold dictator ruler spin-off series, right? That would be the best thing ever.
Okay, let's go on to trivia questions. Dan, what was your question last time, and what was the answer?
My trivia question from last time was Iris West gets killed by the Reverse Flash the first time she dies, and she comes back through really convoluted means that I mentioned last time. How did Professor Zoom Reverse Flash kill her? And the answer is he vibrated his hand through her head.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And the first person who got that right was Renwick Davis. So congratulations to you, sir. My question from last time was, what was the first episode that Big Belly Burger showed up? in Arrow, and the answer was the Lone Gunman. Episode 3 of first season, really early. We already saw one, and we get them all the time now. Just kind of, I'm glad that at this point in Arrow, we're not acting like everyone that like is in the best physical shape ever is eating those. So that's good. But anyway, the first person who got that right was Jamie Cook on email. So congratulations to you. And Dan, what's your question for this week, man?
My question for this week is related to the Rogues, because we had them set up here in the coolest way possible. And in the Rogues' origin, they were initially used as a distraction for the Flash by Gorilla Grodd, so we can kind of take over the world, and they're not really an official team yet. So my question is, after that occasion, what was the original Rogues lineup led by Captain Cold when they become an official kind of group? And I'll give you a clue. There's counting Captain Cold. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 members. So name the 8 original Rogues members, including Captain Cold, who's the leader of the team.
My trivia question is: what is, in honor of the fact that we actually got a kind of a cross little nod between the two shows that Dan and I do on this channel. What is the name of the Star Wars team at the trivia tournament? At the trivia game, what does that Star Wars team call themselves? It's silly.
Yeah, it is.
That's the question. And everybody, thanks as always for listening. This was a super long one. God, hour and a half. I don't know where the time went, Dan. I have no idea where it went.
I just got giddy about talking about Captain Cold. I'm sorry, and the things that aren't even in this episode.
Don't apologize. It's cool. Everybody, as always, feel free to skip around. These seem to be getting longer, but we're having a lot of fun talking about this stuff, and we appreciate you tuning in. If you know the answer to either of our trivia questions or both of them, feel free to answer both if you know them both. Go to geekvolution.com, click on the contact page, fill out that form there, and make sure that whatever name you put in the name slot there is what you'd like to be called on camera. Whoever gets them right first will be mentioned in next week's episode. And until then, I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Dan.
We'll see you next time.